those soon-to-be crabs, can also support the Vomitorium at www.streamlabs.com/Vomitorium Live.
Welcome to the Vomitorium Live, everyone. As always, I am your host, The Metal, here to talk about whatever I feel like talking about today. Oh, which actually, It's a good question for getting in here. Ambrosia Melter asks, what's the typical live stream setup here? Well, since I've only started doing the show back again in this format very recently, basically every single weeknight I come on here for 1 hour and I talk about something that's on my mind, whether it's news, games we've been playing, shows we've been watching, whatever it is, we'll be on here. Chat interaction, people can throw in their 2 cents, sometimes even direct the conversation to some degree, with my curation, of course, and we'll have a good time. Also, during other times of the day, sometimes I play games on this channel, which I do need to get back to finishing the most recent patch for Honkai Star Rail. I started that and never finished, but that's because it rolled right into the holiday season, and of course I was not going to be doing game streams on Christmas. That would just be ridiculous, you know. I didn't even host the show on Christmas. We were off doing better things, including watching Die Hard, because, you know, it's unquestionably a Christmas movie. And we watched Die Hard 2, which is slightly more questionably a Christmas movie, but it still takes place on Christmas, so I think it counts. It just doesn't have the thematic necessity of being a Christmas movie like the original Die Hard does. Its claim isn't as strong. And we watched Elf and a few other things and had a grand old time. But before I get into any of the things I'm about to get into, for those in the chat, if you happen to have gotten anything cool for Christmas or whatever holidays you happen to celebrate at this time, feel free to share them. Maybe I will critique. Maybe I'll just congratulate you for getting something cool. Whatever you got, it was more than I did. So already congratulations on that. Fish Joseph says it's funny how similar Die Hard and Home Alone are. Yes, they are. They're very, very similar movies. And they're both very quintessentially Christmas movies. You don't ever really hear people arguing that Home Alone isn't a Christmas movie, but for some reason people feel the need to argue that Die Hard isn't one. And they're pretty much just as much Christmas movies as each other are. Both of them with heavy themes involving the holiday season, including rekindling with loved ones and fixing broken relationships is a major theme in Die Hard. Actually, it's even kind of a theme in Home Alone as well, with the, I can't remember his name, but the old man that they keep believing is a murderer who murders people with his shovel and ends up burying them, which he wasn't, you know, it's just like rumors and stuff that kids spread around, and he rekindles a relationship with his child after talking to Kevin about it in the church. So actually those themes are integrated into both the movies too. But we're not actually here to talk about Die Hard, unless people want to. We could go further into it. Ambrosia says Home Alone is the kids' version of Die Alone. Yeah, okay. Kevnet got a pretty sick Tyranitar-themed Pokeball. That's pretty thick. Tyranitar is one of my favorite Pokemon. Rest was mostly the best gifts of socks, bed sheets, and sweatshirts. Yeah, you did say Die Alone. We know what you meant. You meant Die Hard. But Die Alone would be a pretty funny movie if it combined the incidents of both Die Hard and Home Alone, where maybe you have John McClane is now setting up very elaborate childish traps for terrorists, even though they weren't actually terrorists in that one. They were only terrorists in the second one. They were the most elaborate bank robbers, or just robbery. It wasn't a bank, but most elaborate robbers ever pretending to be terrorists, which is a very important plot point to the movie. But I agree, the best gifts are socks, bed sheets, and sweatshirts. Specifically socks. Once you become an adult, you really start to appreciate how much you don't have to spend money on your own underwear. I mean, because you have to. But anytime you come to Christmas, you're like, yes, underwear I didn't have to buy. which, yes, socks do qualify as underwear. They were just robbers, but in Die Hard, it was very, very important that they were pretending to be terrorists because that's how they were going to get away with the robbery. That was a very important plot point in the movie. But another similarity is that both of them had like some type of signature, some type of key. One of them, it was to try to get away with their crime. In the other one, it was because they were idiots and couldn't really resist leaving a calling card, which was running the faucets in the house after they robbed it. Which is stupid because that just means that they can track the robberies and know that the same people are doing all of them. And the fact that it took until the incident with Kevin for them to get caught is miraculous. Really. But I personally, I didn't get anything this year. I think I might be getting something later. Typically, type of things that happen when you're adult, especially when everything's crunched on money, is sometimes Christmas gifts are next week. Sometimes they're in the mail. Just is what it is when it comes to all of that. Hey, Mike. Get a slight correction to make in that the name of the show he was talking about last time was Yogi's Gang, not Yogi's Ark. Okay. Well, I guess thanks for the correction. Things I was going to start with. So, I think at some point I'm going to talk a little bit about the Wuthering Waves patch that dropped on Christmas. Very odd time for a patch to drop, but I ended up playing it late into the evening because after we finished our Christmas breakfast, I can say I got pancakes for Christmas. Banana pancakes, and they were delicious. I finished all of them up. Did I see the link you sent to Bruce Willis saying Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie? Maybe it got moderated. It probably did get moderated. YouTube is like that, where it just instantly kills links. Even sometimes by mods. Honestly, you have to agree with him on that one. I have to disagree with him, though. And because the movie itself generally plays out like a Christmas movie. So, you know, he's allowed to have his own interpretation of the movie he was in, though. Everybody is. But if Die Hard's not a Christmas movie, then there's a lot of movies I've watched that people consider Christmas movies that aren't Christmas movies. If you swap the Christmas tree for like a 4th of July barbecue, the entire plot remains exactly the same. It doesn't, though. I think Die Hard 2, you could make more justification. Like, Die Hard 2 would still work if it was on something like Valentine's Day. But the original Die Hard, all of the circumstances only work because it's happening on Christmas. Like, genuinely everything about it. Maybe you could move it to New Year, but it has to be within that little time frame. Between the office parties, between the construction development on the building stalling due to the holiday season, especially because of bank holidays. The fact that it's a bank holiday was also very important, but, you know, you could do 4th of July for that one. But there's a lot of the circumstances. But even more importantly than that, the actual themes in it fit within Christmas themes. Like rekindling with your loved ones. So, it's very valid for you to say it's not. But I think if Die Hard's not a Christmas movie, neither is Home Alone. But also, there are so many other movies like that where I also would say, like, they're just not Christmas movies if Die Hard's not. I didn't want to get hung up with that, though. It's valid. I'm not going to say you can't say that. I'm not going to say he can't say that. Yeah. It's definitely more than a Christmas movie than Lethal Weapon is. Lethal Weapon is like, it's not really a Christmas movie at all. It just happens to start on Christmas. But I played the Wuthering Waves patch. Pretty much all the story, I think. I think I finished it. There might be more. I think they put me onto the companion or character quest afterwards, and I just didn't do that. But I played the main story. I like the world. I think the world is pretty cool. Wuthering Waves is a very weird pathing to where everything seems like it takes place on the same place, like the same planet, but really they're like planar areas. It's very much like a very old antiquity style of looking at different realms, where even if you wander off enough in the same direction, you could walk yourself into another realm. Some things are layered. They take place on like spaces inside of spaces. It's hard to wrap your mind around the map, but I think that's by intent. The new area reminds me a lot of Phantasy Star, which I've played a lot of Phantasy Star in my life. Everything from the older RPGs to the Phantasy Star Online 1 and 2. Never played Phantasy Star Universe. What is Antiquity? Antiquity refers to a time in human history that, I'm trying to remember the exact frame, but it's another way of saying like ancient times. It's pre-Dark Ages, going all the way back to when we started writing records. That's Antiquity. So for a lot of human written history, the way people saw realms, where that everything's just different spaces. Sometimes they would think that the world itself could just go on forever, right? Like, there could be a sea cutting off 2 pieces of land. There's no reason why past the land there isn't more sea cutting off more land, and so on and so forth. You could wander through a forest, and eventually you might even end up in another realm. A lot of times in the scenes, they even kind of almost show like sailing off into another realm. Kefna says, I've looked at it as different islands with how the map looks. It does seem like that too. The new area, though, is completely cut off from the rest of the map. It's got a red border going all the way around. You kind of have to teleport there. You even get there from like a very interesting manner. Yes, I'm talking about Wuthering Waves right now. I've heard it very much described as using Da Vinci's concept of the realms, which was in line with how a lot of people thought about realms in antiquity. But yes, the new place really reminds me of Phantasy Star in design, even how a lot of the story plays out. It's Phantasy Star if it took place at an academy. That's a good way to put it. The coolest part about this zone is that there is a motorcycle that you get. It kind of changes transport. You can't use it in any other zone. Maybe like Flight, they'll retroactively add it to the other zones. I don't know. But the motorcycle makes travel feel very different. Thus, this map is also quite a bit bigger than some of the other maps. It would probably feel empty if the motorcycle wasn't there. Take a long time to get between things. But you could really freestyle on that motorcycle. I probably spent more time just riding around and doing flips and parkouring my way up objects that you probably shouldn't be able to get up on a motorcycle, just because it was genuinely really fun to ride around on the motorcycle. See, Ambrosia Melter says, I've seen ads for Wuthering Waves, but I honestly just assumed it was a cheap Genshin clone. I don't really play gacha games, though, so I'm probably not the best person to judge. It is an expensive Genshin clone, I think would probably be a better way to put it. There isn't really a lot about it that distinguishes it from Genshin aside from its style, being somebody who plays both games. Maybe a little bit of its combat, I would say. It's got a lot more difficult things for you to do on the side, but it, up until this particular region, because this is 3.0, it had this really bad habit of constantly reminding you that this is a competitor to like Hoyo games, or that Hoyoverse had made this style of open world gotcha experience in a live service, which even then they were influenced from other stuff. But they had a really bad time of constantly reminding me that I could be playing one of Hoyo's games instead. From 1.0, where your character, at least initial backstory, about being somebody who kind of wakes up with amnesia, who doesn't really remember how they got there and has to travel through the world, was also very much like Genshin's story, though later it diverges and they let you know, it's like, no, you had a different backstory this entire time, and that's fine. But even when going into 2.0, they had to remind me again, though all of like 1.x was doing this, by showing a giant toothed whale that looked like the all-devouring narwhal in Genshin, and then by having an enemy that basically looked like the ballet dancing twins and functioned like the ballet dancing twins from Zenless Zone Zero. So far, I can safely say that I have not been reminded of a Hoyo game in all of 3.0. I think they finally are ready to move on from that and just develop their own identity. Congratulations, Wuthering Waves. Even if that identity at this point seems to be referencing Phantasy Star. But that's fine. We all take influences from everywhere. There's no problem with that. It just depends on how blatant your influences are, or how much you're just like copying somebody else's homework. If it is just an influence though, and it wants to shape your art, that's cool. Because while I said it reminds me of Phantasy Star, it didn't feel exactly like it. It did feel like, I like these other things, so let me make something that is in the same vein. I think they did a very good job. My opinion of Wuthering Waves was not very strong when I first played it back in 1.0, and it continued to be a pretty negative opinion all through 1.x. It improved in 2.0, not by a large degree, but at least it was in a positive trajectory. I feel the same now. I think 3.0 has been the one I've enjoyed the most out of all of the kind of launches for a new expansion of their game, and it's continuing a positive trajectory. In maybe 2 or 3 years, it might be the best of these type of gacha games if it continues on the trajectory that it is, especially if they retroactively keep adding the new things, like the flight from Renacida. They have added that to everywhere previously now. If they add the motorcycle backwards, that would also keep the game moving in a positive direction, because then new people who join the game would be able to experience that in the current state instead of having to slug through the old versions of the game. You're going to start playing it just because I mentioned the motorcycle. And you know what? I think the best way to play the game so far has been to just skip. And I don't mean skip all the story stuff. You can go back and watch that. But I mean, they will... I think after the 1.0 story, there will be a jump where you can quick start to the newest stuff, and then you can go back and play the old stuff later. I think that is the best way to play that game. It is good that they have that function, because you're going to see all the advertisements and all the people talking about all the new stuff. And wouldn't it suck if you had to spend 3 or 4 months grinding through as fast as possible the old stuff to get to the cool new stuff? No. They're going to let you jump into it basically right away. And then if you want to find out what the other stuff was later, you can go and backlog through everything. They allow that amount of freedom? Yes, they do. And I think they kind of have to, because their competitors have been doing that. Honkai Star Rail has been giving a quick start feature for people getting into the new versions of the game. Genshin Impact even has been doing a quick start feature for people to jump to the most recent patch, as long as they start it within the time of the patch. I think in the ecosystem that these games exist now, you cannot afford to be too restrictive. You have to let people jump into the new stuff, especially if the new stuff gives you a radically different experience from the older ones. You don't remember that from Honkai Star Impact? I'm assuming you mean Honkai Impact 3rd. Maybe. Or Honkai Star Rail. You kind of combine two of the names. Star Rail added that, I think, for Amphorius, which was last year's new patch. I don't remember if they had that before that. But they did let people jump all the way to the new world, and they're going to continue to do that. I believe Honkai Impact 3rd only started doing that maybe... No, actually, they let you do that a while ago. I'm trying to remember what patch. Because now they let you jump straight to Part 2, which is a fundamentally different game than Honkai Impact 3rd Part 1. But when was I able to just start jumping chapters? Because I started Impact 3rd a lot later than a bunch of other people, and I had to play catch-up for a while. But I remember at a certain point, they let me jump straight to, like, chapter 20-something. So it's in there. But a lot of these things were added later into the game. For most of these games, but they've become a standard now, and you can't really afford not to do this if you're making a game as broad as some of these games are. See, Kefta says it's pretty hype with the new Chapter 9 Season 7 trailer for Limbus Company. Man, I am so far behind in Limbus Company. I started it. I don't even remember what canto I'm in, but it's probably like somewhere within the first 4. I know the story up through maybe 5 or 6 because I've watched people play it. But because I've watched people play it, I don't even remember where I personally stopped. I should get back into it sometime. It's a very good RPG. But yeah, it has become standard now that if you run these long live service games where the features can be completely different 4 or 5 years into the future, that you have to be able to let people quick start. Otherwise, people will pick up your game. You're like, this is nothing like what was advertised to me at all. And then you have to just spend way too much time catching up, and you'll probably give up the game by then. I think I myself, even though I play WUA, was a little bit behind. I might have still been, on 2.5 maybe? I don't remember the exact patch number. You feel like I shouldn't have done that? I already knew the story. It's fine. I watch a lot of people play these games too. Some of them jump on it right away. Even when you stream some games, like I'm caught up on Star Rail for the most part. I stream Star Rail. It's hard to be caught up on all of these games yourself. So I end up seeing the story through other people. I was only maybe a patch or 2 behind. I knew what happened in between. I basically only ended up skipping possibly the last patch to jump to it. And it's not a full skip in the fact that like, I can go back and play the stuff I was stuck on. I could go back at any time and I could play through Chisa's story. And it's perfectly fine. But if you don't take the skip, it might be forever until you get to the new place. And even though there is continuity between them, a lot of the areas are so divided from each other that you're not really getting too spoiled by playing the new area. It's going to be, for the most part, a self-contained story. Rover's history will be there. But you get to a new place, they've got their own problems. You'll solve their problems and eventually move on. I would probably not recommend doing the skip outside of a X.0 update, right? 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. When you have the new region, that is kind of a reset point. So you're not going to be worried about being spoiled by too much. If you found yourself in, say, 3.1 or 3.2, well, then you're going to be missing the context from 3.0. That part I would probably agree with you, where you probably should not skip forward. For sure. Basically, it satisfies the people with skill issue and some of the people with time issue, right? They understand that one of the big draws to these live service games are that they're often very much a pick-up, put-down game for a lot of people. I prefer to play these games on PC or console, but a lot of people play these games on their phone, so they can play them online or whatever. But people have very busy lives, and they want to make sure not only can new people get into the new content, but also the people who've been following on maybe a more casual level can continue to stay in the game. Obviously, they don't have to worry about their hardcore players, the people who like to do the weekly or bi-weekly or monthly endgame rotations, because those people are playing all the time anyway. You never have to worry about those people. But the reality is, those people are also not the people the majority of your income comes from on these live service games. Often, your income comes most through the semi-casual players who maybe keep up with all the content, but they don't do enough of everything. They're not the ones who are grinding all of the pull currency that exists in the game so that they don't have to spend a lot of money. They're people who come in, they play the story. They may not even play the whole story in one sitting. It might take them a while to get through the part that they're in. They are willing to drop money for the characters they exactly want. And because of that, they end up spending way more money than the people who grind through and get every single reward in the game. These are the people that keep your business afloat, so you kind of have to make your live service catered around them. I find these skips much better than how some MMOs have done it, though, because you can go back and play through the other patches. It's more of a quick start, fast forward. All the quests previously still exist in the game. I remember keeping up with Final Fantasy XIV for quite a long time. I enjoyed Final Fantasy XIV. They kind of lost me during the end of Endwalker and the post-Endwalker area, so I haven't played Dawn Trail. I've watched a friend play quite a bit of it. Dawn Trail doesn't interest me so much. If the next expansion does interest me, though, maybe I'll go back through and play through Dawn Trail. Final Fantasy XIV, for a very long time, has sold a skip feature. And the skip feature functions on two different levels. It can get new players who have never played the game before, who want to just experience the newest content with their friends, all the way to the new content. It can also help old players who may be back before they let you jump around on any data center on the same physical location. So now you can go to any of the servers in North America if you're on a North America server, and so on and so forth in each of the physical locations. But before that, you would have had to start a new character per server. And that would help you jump to where you were if you wanted to play with a friend on another server. The issue with that, though, is it doesn't just fast forward you to the newest content when they sell those story skips. It actually just clears everything in the game for you up to that point. But that is okay, because at least Final Fantasy XIV, in their unending journey, have a New Game Plus mode, where you can go back and play through all of the story parts at your current level in a more limited fashion to experience the story. I wish a lot of these games had that function. They should literally just steal that from Final Fantasy XIV. It is probably one of the best things that game does from a live service perspective. Because the problem with a lot of these games are they have virtually zero replay value. And when I grade a game, very often, I grade it on the game's replay value. If I could pop a game in, 5, 10 years later and enjoy it again like I did when I first played it. Obviously to a new level, because you can never actually experience something for the first time again unless you get amnesia or something. The problem with these games is because they're a live service where you have to have everything built on account, because they don't have this flashback system. The only way to experience the game again is to make a new account, which leads to the other problem of you will not have all the characters that you pulled in the gacha when you make the new account. They should all have a New Game Plus mode, or at least some type of flashback. That is something that is being considered. I remember in one of the special presentations, the special programs for Honkai Star Rail, they did say that they were going to allow you to start going back and re-experiencing old chapters of the game if you wanted to, using the Fate Atlas, I believe is what it's called. That's cool. Honkai Impact 3rd has always allowed you to do that because it's a mission-based game, so you could just go back and replay any mission. Any mission-based game has never had that problem. But these more linear, longer story, especially open world games, have the problem that once you do something, you just cannot do it again. And some of them are slowly fixing it. And that's fine if you slowly fix it, because retroactively, it will give you the option to do everything again. It doesn't matter when they add it, just that eventually it gets added, I think would be cool. On FF, you could basically restart the world from scratch while keeping your current level. Kind of, sort of. It is like a mission mode. You can open up the New Game Plus, and they'll have different thumbnails. They'll have different thumbnails of the different chapters, and you could start with any single one of them if you want. Or you could go back to the beginning and play through all of them. And you could re-experience the story and the dungeons and everything. I believe when you New Game Plus, though, they do level sync you. That's perfectly fine, realistically, because it's only for experiencing the story parts of the game. In Final Fantasy XIV, which is an online game, it's an MMO, you can already just go back and play any dungeon at any time. You have to grind things, and you can either choose to queue up with people, which will level sync you down to the dungeon, or if you want to get through it fast, you can just go in by yourself at a higher level if you're high enough level that you could kill everything, or queue up with some other people at a higher level, but you do not have to level sync if you go in with a pre-made party. I would often do that myself when I had to do my weekly grinds, because sometimes they would be like, you need to do a dungeon between levels 1 and 50. And be like, okay, I'm just going to go clear Sestasha because it'll take me 5 minutes to run through the dungeon by myself at max level. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it is an easy way to knock out a check mark on your bingo card. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking more about being able to replay through the story, and they do level sync you. It's less of an issue, I think, with these gacha games, though, because most of them are built in a way to where the game rises with you anyway. Once you hit certain checkpoints, certain player levels, to be able to continue or get better drops, you have to do some type of ascension quest, which will end up raising the world level of the game, so where everything becomes tougher. You can still outlevel them, but it'll be within a range of 10 levels, and you can be sitting at the top of it, until often you get to the highest world level, where the enemies will probably be a higher level than you can even get as a player. Right? Even if your level cap is 90, these enemies could be anywhere between 100 to 110 levels. To mitigate that, though, in case grinding is too hard for you, they will also often allow every 24 hours for you to shift between your current and one world level below, and then you can always revert it. You wouldn't want to if you're good at the game, if you're caught up, because you get more drops at the higher world levels, which makes it easier to grind new characters. You just take your old ones, kill all the hard stuff, and then you can build a new character like that. But I think my overall opinion on the 3.0 update to Wuthering Waves is positive. I feel positive about it. I can't really say much more than that. Because all of these X.0 updates are kind of setting up for the stuff that will happen later. They're world building for that region. It was still a very good story, though. It had a really cool boss fight where you actually fight this giant mechanical worm thing. And I mean giant. It's like the size of a sandworm from Dune, maybe even bigger, on a motorcycle. Like, you actually use the motorcycle in this combat. It was really cool. I enjoyed that sequence a lot from a player. I often don't like some of their non-combat sections, or the sections that don't use the base combat of the game with your characters, because a lot of them don't seem very well thought out, or maybe they'll do like a parkour sequence that you can't really fail, and I always have to grade those really poorly. But the motorcycle feels very integrated into the environment, and I feel like they actually thought about the combat with that worm a lot. Like, they spent the time really plotting it out so that it would be a fun sequence. And I have to give them a plus on that. See, Ambrosia says, when everything levels up with you, I mean, not to contradict myself, but I feel like level scaling actually ruins the sense of progression. I often feel that way too. It's not exactly the same as something like modern Elder Scrolls games, or something like the Ultimate Vault Hunter mode in Borderlands, where every single time you gain a level, everything else levels up. The only thing that progresses with you is the world level, which will set everything in a range. So there will still be some things that you will be higher level than in that world level, as long as you're actually grinding and keeping up with your characters. So you will still feel stronger, for sure. But you will lose that cool part of an RPG where you can run back to the earliest place and one-shot like a level 1 monster and feel better about yourself. The only way you can achieve that is by going into somebody else's world, because it is a multiplayer game where you can queue up with other people. Most of these games, though, only let you go one way. I don't know if Wuthering Waves functions exactly this way. I haven't tried. I haven't actually played Wuthering Waves with anyone else other than maybe I ran a domain once with some other people, like I queued up. But in Genshin, if it functions the same, you can only ever enter a world that is the same world level or lower than yours. You can never enter a higher one, probably so you don't immediately die, is probably what they're thinking. I think that's stupid, though. They should let you die if you want to jump into a friend's world. But the other one is probably just so you don't level up too fast from getting higher drops in a world that you shouldn't be in anyway. I think that's probably more the reason, because while they do give you a certain level of freedom, these games do like to restrict your progress. Yeah, I think the world level system is a great way to keep a game like this balanced for long-term enjoyment. Yeah, without it, you could see somebody just grinding an early area until they're way too strong, then steamrolling the next world. Yeah, and you also have issues where they cap you off on your level. So your character's levels will be capped to your world level too. At a certain point, you will not be able to raise their level until you've done the Ascension quest, which also kind of balances things out in that way too. I don't agree that it's the best way to do it, but it's definitely a way to do it. It helps, I think, not overload the player at the same time. Because as you play, you will just constantly get more and more characters. Call them 4 stars, your A ranks, your lower tier characters that drop that you don't have to wait for a banner to get. They're just there all the time. And you'll get so many of those that if you could just start maxing out the level right away, you would feel overwhelmed with the number of characters you need to build. While sitting in an area where, like, at first your level cap is 20, it's pretty easy to get every single character to level 20. You could even choose, like, I want to get all my characters to 20 before I move on to the next world level that raises the cap to 40. And as it gets higher, you have to start being pickier about who you level. And you might condense who you build down right away to a smaller and smaller pool of characters you actually like. But that's also a fine system because you don't know who you like when you first start playing a game. You don't know if you like the way this character plays. Maybe the voiceover for the character bothers you, so you just don't want to hear them talking all the time. Whatever reason it is, you don't know who you like at first. So making it very easy to level everyone to your first level cap at the beginning gives you the ability to try every character. And then as it gets harder and harder to level, you can narrow down which ones you want. And then once you have a fully leveled team or two, then you can go back and start grinding up the other characters to the top, which will become easier once you're at the highest world level. It's a horizontal investment that slowly becomes vertical because of you narrow out. And then it starts to become horizontal again because you will just have access to more rewards, making almost like an hourglass shape. It's a very manageable progression system, which makes sense again to what I said earlier, where they want to make sure that their semi-casual players keep coming back to play the game. It is in their best interest from a business standpoint to make the game in this way. And I can't complain. I stopped playing Genshin for, I think, a couple years at one point. And so I was so far behind. And then I jumped back. And it was time-consuming, but pretty easy for me to catch up to the content at that time. I came back to play the Fontaine update, which meant I had to play all the way through Inazuma and Sumeru, 2 full regions to get there. And my characters were not at an appropriate level for it. But it really didn't feel like a burden to catch up because of the nature of the system. How does the leveling system work? Remember, in Dawn of War 2, you level up your heroes and units by investing in specific attributes like melee range, strength, and energy. And always thought that was a unique way to handle progression in an RTS. So leveling works in basically all of these games from Genshin on, because Genshin kind of changed how most of these games handle their progression system, where you have your player level that keeps going up based on everything you do, going through the story, running domains, whatever. You'll get player experience that will give you a player rank. But then each of the characters obviously have their own level. There will be a level mat that you can feed into them, but they can also get levels from killing things. It just takes a lot longer to level up that way. And then every 10 levels or so, they will need ascension materials to be able to break that level cap and repeat the process into the next one. Usually you'll have to fight world bosses or some equivalent to a world boss to get your ascension material. In Genshin specifically, Wuthering Waves is the same way because they're both built on that open world system. You're going to have to find some items scattered around the map maybe some flowers for some characters, maybe it's a fish, who knows. But you'll have to collect so many of those things for those limit break milestones in the character's leveling system. Aside from that, you will also have some type of skill system that you need to level up. You'll have talents, skills, traces, whatever they want to call it, and those will have their own mats that you need to farm, and you'll be able to level up their passives, their active talents, their ultimates, everything like that. Characters, depending on what your current level cap is or how caught up you are with the game, can take anywhere between a couple weeks to reach max level to a couple days. If you know what you're doing, it can be very, very efficient to get there. Genshin, I think, is the worst on it because with how old the system is, they really need to change this. The local specialties that you need for ascending somebody up a level only spawn every 48 hours, every 2 game resets. And you can get somebody up to like level 60 really fast on like a single day. They'll have that many of the resource on the map, but then it might take you until next week to finish it because you'll need more and more with each ascension. Wuthering Waves doesn't have this problem as much because I'm pretty sure every single equivalent to the local specialty resets every single day. If you know what character you want is coming out, it is pretty easy to pre-farm for it, and you could just build everyone like that. Or if you just keep up on it and grab everything you see in your path, you'll probably have enough to get started regardless. But yeah, it's pretty simple. I actually like the way Zenless Zone Zero works the best, though. As you were saying, you were focusing on attributes like melee range, strength, or energy in Dawn of War 2. In Zenless, the material you need to upgrade a character is fixed to the class of that character. Whether they're a support unit, attack unit, anomaly, rupture, whatever, they just use that upgrade. And it's pretty easy to just get that. And if you know it's a character that's going to be using that in the future, you could just store up a lot on it. You could store up your stamina for grinding too. You could get everything you need to build somebody in literally a single sitting in Zenless Zone Zero. Let's see. You ask, for you, does it make it hard to try out new characters? Well, yeah, it depends how much trying out you feel you need. These games always give you trials for the character, a little combat session that you can load up and play them at max build and see how they play with their best team, more or less, or at least the one that's available at the time that the trial came out. So you can get a feel for how they play. But if you wanted to do more than that, it varies from game to game. Some of them will give you a full playable trial in one of their side modes or some of the events that come out. Zenless Zone Zero is really good about this, where if you like their roguelike mode, Hollow Zero, the current version has a ton of character trials that are just in there that you can load up and play at any time. You do not need to own the character. You can just go in there and play them to your heart's content. That's pretty cool. But it can be very frustrating in, say, Genshin, where it could take forever. And you get a new character, you're like, man, I didn't plan on getting this new character. So now it's going to take me like a week to build them because of waiting on the local specialties. And I might be able to use them sooner if I drop world level for a little while. But they're pretty much just going to be there taking up space on the bench until I finish building them. It is a little anticlimactic. Like, you just got the big drop, a cool new character, can't even really use them. That's why I would always recommend in these games pre-farming before the character comes out, if available, if you know you're going to aim for them at all. At the same time, this really only matters if you care about the side modes, which the vast majority of players do not care about the challenge modes on the side. A lot of people will tell you these are the things that make the games different, and to some extent they do. But it is mostly the more elite, hardcore, and sweaty players that actually care about these modes. If you want to just play through the story, you can play through the story of most of these games with literally any character at any level. Like, at all. It's perfectly fine. Except for maybe Honkai Star Rail. Honkai Star Rail being a turn-based RPG, the stats of your characters do matter a bit more, and I think that was kind of true that you could play through the story with under-invested character. Probably up until the end of Penacony. I think once we got to maybe the Adventuring fight for some people, but the Sunday fight for sure was such a stat and character check fight in the main story that you kind of have to be invested in your characters to be able to get through it. And see, remember when I played Honkai Star Rail for a bit, the story let me try out new characters temporarily before they left the party. Are those the trials you're talking about? I'd say that's actually a pretty creative way to let players test them out. That wasn't the one I was specifically talking about. They have like a one-time trial that actually you can repeat as often as you want in the event section that let you play with their full team. But that is also another way that you get to try out these characters. All of these games do it. Genshin does that. WoW does that, where as you're playing through the story, they will drop like a version of that character into your party. Sometimes they'll make you include that character in your party to play through that section of the story, but they'll let you use your version if you happen to already have it. That is a good way to try it out. I believe with Star Rail, the first time they did that was technically with the Fantilia boss fight at the end of the Xinjiao Luofu, where you had to have Jing Yuan in your party to fight her. But in Penacony, they actually forced you to put both Aventurine and Acheron in your party pretty early on during different sections they weren't in at the same time. And those were good ways of letting you try them out. And I do think that is a good way of letting people know if they like the character, especially if you get to try them before their banner comes up. Usually, one of the two characters will already be on banner, but they already have both of them built into the game already. They were patched in. So the other one will be in the story too, and you can try them out and see what it is before their banner even comes around, so you can know if, like, maybe I just want to save up for that character instead. I think that's a great way of doing it. It's one of the things I have to compliment them on, for sure. Well, I was going to talk about a couple other things, but I ended up talking mostly about these gacha systems. That has been our hour for today. Thank you guys for showing up and joining the Vomitorium Live. I'm the Metal. I will see you guys Monday. Same time, same place. We'll talk about something else. I will probably also, maybe earlier on Monday, end up finishing the Dahlia storyline on Honkai Star Rail. So, happy holidays, and we will have our extended all-nighter for New Year's that we do every year. Take it easy.